join us here today in the LowTax boardroom. I'm Martin McKechnie, the Client Services Director at the LowTax Group, and joined with me today by our Managing Director, Richard Bayliss. Today is the first in our series of videos which will be exploring the tricky subject of expenses. Today we're specifically going to have a look at the claims around travel expenses and having a look at what that means for our clients. So, Richard, we all know that expenses must be wholly, exclusively and necessarily incurred by the employee to be allowable. Could you explain to us how that's going to impact upon our clients when it comes to travel expenses?
Travel expenses are an issue that often crops up, and it's a bit of a minefield really. On the face of it, most commuting actually fails the wholly, exclusively and necessarily rule, because it isn't necessary for two people to travel the same place, in that they're not at work until they arrive there, so the commute is often getting them in a position to work rather than in the performance of their duties. Okay. However, for quite a few years now, the Inland Revenue have had some rules which I think are fairly generous, and we can guide our clients through them to make sure that they can take advantage. What HM Revenue and Customs have said is that if someone does not have a fixed place of work, they are allowed to claim the cost to and from their home to that place of work.
So in that case, what classes as a fixed place of work?
Luckily, we've been given guidance on this from the Inland Revenue, and it's basically anywhere that you spend more than 40% of your working week, which basically for most people would be 2 days a week or more, and you're at that site for more than 2 years. A lot of our clients are on contracts, maybe for a year, maybe for 6 months. That obviously means that they're not going to break the 2-year rule. So even if they're at one place for more than 40% of the time, they can still claim their ordinary commuting costs because they haven't broken the 2-year rule.
So in that case then, it'll be perfectly allowable so long as your contract is less than 2 years.
That's correct. There is one point to bear in mind, that it's either 2 years or the point at which you expect or know you'll be there for more than 2 years.
So say I had a contract that was for 18 months and then I had an extension for a year. At that point that I signed the new contract, that's the point at which I'd have to stop making my travel expense claims for to and from work. That's
exactly right. I'd also like to clarify the point about 40%. Now, if somebody has 1 day a week at 5 different sites, then they can claim for as long as they like. There's no 2-year time limit. The 2-year time limit only applies if someone is at a site for more than 2 days a week. So an example of somebody who goes into their place of work, say on a Monday morning, and then travels around for the rest of the week, they could claim for as long as they wanted because they would have no fixed place of work.
Okay, Richard, so I've had my contract for 12 months, I've got a new job, I've got a new contract now. Does that mean my 2-year clock starts again?
The answer, as is often the case with tax, is it depends. Basically, if your new place of work entails a different journey from your previous journey, then the 2-year clock starts again.
So I could see this being a problem if you worked in London.
What the Inland Revenue have said is that for someone in the banking sector, for example, they would consider the city to be their place of work. So changing from one bank to another a few hundred yards away would not automatically restart your 2-year clock.
So when you say the city, do you mean the square mile in London, or do you mean the whole city?
What I was referring to there was the financial area called the city.
The square mile?
Yes, that's right. There are other sectors, for example, down the M4 corridor there's an IT area. Now the Inland Revenue would argue that that is one distinct site because of your specialism. But broadly, in terms of general industry, as long as the journey is significantly different, you'll restart your clock.
So it's not the actual physical address of the building, it is in fact the area that the buildings are located in when moving jobs?
Yes, and that's only really an issue if an area specialises in a certain industry that you also specialise in.
Okay, so for example, if I worked in IT and had a job in Nottingham and then transferred another job in Nottingham, that wouldn't be an issue because it's not a set designated destination of that sector.
As long as your journey changed, it's not just one bus stop or you turn left when you get off the bus instead of right.
Okay. So when I commute into work, I get the train, cup of coffee in the morning. Can I expense the coffee as part of my journey?
Well, part of the good news here is that what the revenue say is that if a trip is allowable, then all costs associated with that trip are also allowable, anything incidental to it. So if you were on a 10-minute commute, then not really, you couldn't really have a cup of coffee. But if you were on a train for half an hour, then there's no reason why not.
So are there any other pitfalls that our clients should be aware of?
Well, there is one particular trap that we try and keep our clients out of, and that is that if a client has already been working in an area, the 2-year clock is already running. So if someone has previously been employed in a particular location, getting a contract at that same place could mean that they're not able to reset their 2-year clock, because the time spent at that place of work as an employee also counts towards the 2-year period.
So this concludes the first of our video presentations regarding expenses, and we hope you tune in next time to be able to give you more insight. If you do have any questions or further information required in regards to your own personal tax situation, please don't hesitate to contact myself. Richard, I'd like to say thank you for your time, and I'd like to say thank you very much to yourself for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future.